Fasten your seatbelts for the realest Eagles and Sixers YouTuber! One who plays no clickbait and gets to the point! The myth, the legend, Nicky Steves! Come to my channel, you know the deal. Yo, boy, always keeps sticks real. I'm simply statue, think they slate, dropping unrealistic mad. 2K takes for the clip. Even though cats like that get views closer to the milli, never hear me preach, LeBron to Philly. Before you watch the Eagles all the way through the early 22, authentic talk, forget what others do. Come to my channel, you know the deal. Yo, boy, always keep things real. The 24/7, 365 way. Sports content for the reals that fill the day. Happy Halloween, folks, everyone. Today is episode 32 of the 3-Point Blitz. And this one's going to be a little bit different. This one's going to be shorter. We're going to go about an hour or so. I got some other obligations for the day. So we're just going to go straight right to the point with this one. Thanks for everyone that's tuned in. Let's get right into it. We start off with the rant of the week. So 34 people combined were arrested in a whole gambling scandal involving illegal poker games, including current Portland Trailblazers head coach Chauncey Billups, former player and Cavs assistant coach for the Cavs Dame Jones, Terry Rozier, who was active with the Miami Heat, are the main three that are arrested in relation to this. So now we get into it. I mean, I listened to some of what people had to say. Pat McAfee had to say he invited a former poker player onto his show to talk about it. Listen to what Inside the NBA had to say. Now, with this one right here, I remember because this is just pure stupidity by these guys right here. Because these poker games in some way influence the outcome of NBA games, apparently. I'm going through my notes. Most notably, this whole thing happened, including Chauncey Billups most notably was involved in rigged poker games backed by the Mafia, folks. That's right. The Mafia is still around. So Chauncey Billups has ties to organized mobsters as a head coach. And apparently the gambler, this whole deal was there was gamblers used non-public information to bet on at least 7 NBA games in between March 2023 and March 2024 involving the Hornets, Orlando Magic, Portland Trailblazers, who Chauncey Billups is the coach of, the Los Angeles Lakers, and Toronto Raptors. And supposedly in the 3 of these 7 games, players intentionally removed themselves from the contest to benefit the gamblers. So the players were involved in this in some way, shape, or form, which means some people could be throwing games, and now this influences the outcomes. Blatantly influences the outcome of games. We had a problem back in the 2000s with Tim Donaghy. Remember him? The NBA referee got thrown in jail for gambling on games. Particularly, there was one game he was an official for back in 2002. And he ratted himself out, and everyone believed him because that was a game that was blatantly fixed. We'll talk about that game 6 between the Los Angeles Lakers and Sacramento Kings with the Kobe Shaq duo, Chris Webber, Peja Stojakovic, Vlade Divac, and that team. Remember, that game 6, it was blatant. And then Tim Donaghy, when he was brought up on gambling charges, admitted that that was fixed. And now here we are now, years later, we got another gambling scandal, this time involving players involved in illegal poker games, including gambling wagers on the sports itself. Bottom line, anyone involved in this should be locked up, period, because they're negatively affecting the integrity of the game, and they're going to force, and they're going to influence players to throw games, to intentionally pull themselves out of games, which is so that way the mobsters can directly benefit from it. If there's a certain parlay that maybe say Zion gets 10 rebounds. Not that this happened, but for example, this could affect the game if, say, there's and one of the things, they've been paying players to go along with this too. So this is not a real example, but let's just say there was a bet by one of these mobsters for Zion to get 10 rebounds in a game. What they could do is pay Zion extra to get 10 rebounds and fake an injury once he hits that, so he gets removed from the rest of the game. So that way, the mobsters could win money off of it. That's just one example of how this can be used. That's not a specific example. I haven't seen specifics yet, but there hasn't been any players directly named who've removed themselves from games, but we know it's happening. And this is just what we know of, too. Pat McAfee brought up a great point. This could go deeper. This could be happening in football, could be happening in college sports, baseball, hockey, even individual sports. It's all right. And so this could be happening a lot more than we know of. It's causing fans to think sports are rigged. Or if anything, it's tying into people's assumptions and suspicions that some of the sports are rigged. And people have already had their suspicions, especially in recent years with the NFL. That's been one of the main suspects, the two conspiracy theories of rigging. And now hearing this about the NBA, for them, this to them in their mind might feed their assumptions. Like, you see, it's happening with basketball. I know it's happening with football. In their mind, they're probably thinking that right now. So this just feeds into a lot of fans' assumptions about sports being rigged, that it is. And in this case, to some degree, it kind of is to some degree. It's not directly rigging it, but when you're influencing players to pull themselves out of games once they reach a certain stat line and bribing them to do so, that to some degree fixing the outcome. Even if it's not the direct end outcome, but it is fixing certain players' stats and having an impact on the game. So this is to some degree rigging the games. Even if it may not be rigging the direct outcome, it is. And anyone involved, Chauncey Billups, especially him as a head coach, because then he could be coaching his own team to throw games, or he could be intentionally pulling players out of games, or it could be intentionally putting out the bench or something if it's going to have a direct effect on the outcome of a game. That's something you don't need. And then Terry Rozier again. Now, he's been called out, so he might be one of the guys doing it. And there's been rumored speculation that maybe Gilbert Arenas ratted some of these guys out because he was arrested for illegal poker a few months ago. I wouldn't be surprised if Agent Zero had something to do with this. Gilbert Arenas was arrested for illegal poker games a few months ago. I talked about. Now, here we are, 2 to 3 months later. Chauncey Billups, Dame Jones, Terry Rozier, and more are arrested for involvement in illegal poker games and involved with betting in the NBA. Coincidence? I don't know. I don't think so. I'm going to come out on a limb and say Gilbert Arenas is now officially the Jose Canseco of the NBA. Player who was a star for a period of time, let his own stupidity be his undoing, and his post-playing days ratted out other people and tried to Oh, yeah, and the referees, that could be another rant of the week for another episode. But in this case, like I said, unfortunately, I'm kind of short on time this one around, so we're going to have to move right along. So that's my rant of the week. Shame on everyone involved. Start locking people up for it and protect the integrity of the game. Moving right along, we're going to start with the football, start with the Week 8 recap, start off with the Chargers and Vikings on Thursday night. Oh boy, the Minnesota Vikings, let's just say they're not the team we thought they might be. The opposite of Dennis Green's, we are who we thought they were. Now, the Chargers, on the other hand, had themselves a good game. Herbert had a few touchdown passes, and he's getting a lot of shine for it. But we also got to give credit where credit's due to Jim Harbaugh in the run game. Even with Rashawn Slater being out for the season, even with that being a potential hole in the team, the Chargers keep finding ways to win games, even with Omarion Hampton out on injured reserve. Even with, what's his name? Najee Harris out in IR. The Chargers, with a third-string running back, are finding ways to win games. And their running backs are really playing up to expectation. We had, what's-his-face? He had another over 100-yard rushing game. Two, and had himself a really good one. So it's the rookie unknown. Now he's starting to shine too. And we see that Jim Harbaugh, much like Mike Shanahan, can just take a running back, insert him in there, boom. And they end up having themselves a phenomenal game. And we're seeing it here. So I got to give credit, man, to Jim Harbaugh. He's finding ways to make the most of this run game. This offense is still doing its best as can. I know they're playing against the Vikings, and that helps. But you're finding ways to win games. You're 5-3, which you certainly need in that AFC West, where you got the Broncos and Chiefs are on a roll. The Chargers need wins, and they got one here against the Vikings. So salute to the Chargers. And for the Vikings, they need to do something. They need a better offensive line because their quarterbacks keep getting injured. J.J. McCarthy injured. They went with Carson Wentz. He played he was up and down from week to week, and now he's injured. He's out for the season. Do we go and get Joshua Dobbs back? But the Vikings, they also need help on the offensive line to protect their quarterback too, not just the quarterback itself. And there's a lot of red flags for the future there. But for the Chargers, congrats on the win. They keep rolling. The run game, no matter who it is, you insert them in there, they do well. Justin Herbert's doing good in these games, but so congrats to the Chargers on the win. Take the free win, move right along. Now in the shocker of the week, oh boy, the Miami Dolphins beat the Atlanta Falcons. The offense actually showed up. I'm like, wait a minute. Weren't the Falcons supposed to have one of the better defenses in the NFL? Granted, they're kind of a mediocre team, but aren't they supposed to have one of the better defenses? I thought. Didn't they keep the Buffalo Bills offense in check? Now, all of a sudden, the Miami Dolphins, who've been struggling all season, score 4 touchdowns. Tua throws 4 touchdowns to 4 different receivers. Kirk Cousins came in and stat padded, but the offense couldn't get moving. They only got 10 points against the Dolphins. I know it's been nearly a year since Cousins played, but still, you would think the Falcons, Bijan Robinson, and having a few decent weapons would be good enough against the Dolphins for Cousins to at least have a good enough game, but the opposite ended up happening. Falcons couldn't get moving on offense. Their defense couldn't stop a struggling Miami Dolphins team. Now, Tua had himself a really good game here. I'd say, look, Tua, congratulations. Take the game. Take the win. And Falcons, man, the most inconsistent team in the NFL right now. I'll just put it that way. They still can't get over 28-3, can they? But congrats to the Dolphins, Falcons. We'll see where you go from here. Moving right along. This was a bit of a surprise considering that this team's been struggling. The Baltimore Ravens, though, took care of business with a 30-16 win against the Bears. Now, if you would have told us back during week 1, the Ravens are going to meet the Bears 30-16, back during week 1, that would have been the expected outcome. But in between weeks 1 and 7, it just happened. Something really weird happened, and now all of a sudden, yeah, exactly. Falcons, yeah, they're a roller coaster. They're like a roller coaster ride. Just lots of up and downs. And the Baltimore Ravens, I was saying, you would have thought the Ravens, based off what happened between weeks 1 and 7, actually the Bears were expected to maybe win this game. They had the better record. Ravens were the struggling team. But to be fair, what happened was you had the Bears were down. Their secondary was depleted. And their defense couldn't stop Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry had a pretty good game in this one. And even Tyler Huntley against that battered Bears defense had himself a good game. And the Ravens are now 2-5, and their schedule is going to get a little bit easier. So maybe they get Lamar back. Maybe they start to sneak back into playoff contention if they win a few games. But that's a big if that still remains to be seen. For the Bears, now I will say this. Ben Johnson has done a better job than Matt Eberflus. I'll give him that. But the Bears are still not a complete team. And Caleb Williams, so far it's not looking like he's the long-term guy for this team. It's just, I'm not seeing it, because with the Bears offense this year, they mainly rely on their run game. And DeAndre Swift, we saw when the Bears win, DeAndre Swift usually plays well, but this go around, DeAndre Swift couldn't get going. Caleb Williams didn't impress. And the Bears secondary was depleted. Tyler Huntley had a good game, and Derrick Henry had a good game. But it's performances like this when I'm not sold on the Bears. I just see them middle of the pack team. Granted, you got a better coach than you had last year with Eberflus so far, but I don't see this team really being anything special. For the Ravens, if they get Lamar back, maybe they go on a run, maybe not. But that remains to be determined. Especially with the Steelers losing, dropping 2 straight, that could help the Ravens if they just start winning. But that's another subject to talk about. But where they also received help, the Ravens got it from an unlikely source. The New York Jets. The New York Jets beat the Cincinnati Bengals. Okay. Well, we can say this one. This is what happens when you have a team like the Cincinnati Bengals who have a good offense, but a dumpster fire defense. Usually get these high-scoring games. In some cases, they often lose close high-scoring games. And with Flacco, I'll say this. Flacco in recent weeks has been good on offense with the weapons around him. But you're talking about, what, the 40-year-old Joe Flacco, too? This is not prime Flacco. And with all due respect to Flacco, he's not the same tier quarterback as Burrow when Burrow is healthy. So there's even then with Flacco doing really well at this offense. He's not the best quarterback in the NFL, with all due respect. And that defense is an absolute dumpster fire. And see, even though the Jets' record says they're dumpster fire, which they are in terms of wins, they are a scrappy bunch. Even in their losses, we've seen the Jets. They're competitive. Even against Tampa Bay, they put up a good effort. They put up a fight against Pittsburgh. So there's at least effort and there's fight from the Jets. Even though it's not resulting in wins, there was at least effort. So this was the perfect matchup, particularly against the dumpster fire defense, for the Jets to do just enough to get the win, and they did just that. Now, maybe the owner's comments lit a fire under Justin Fields when he stepped in. Maybe it was the Bengals' dumpster fire defense. Maybe a little bit of both. I'm leaning toward those both. Now, I'll say this about the Bengals. Bengals are, if you're a fan of offensive football, they are an exciting team to watch. Usually their games are close, high-scoring games. You can rely on them usually being fun to watch. We saw with Pittsburgh Thursday night a lot of offense. We saw 2 days ago against the Jets a lot of offense. Now, that's good from a fan perspective. If you don't have a dog in the race, you get to enjoy the show. But for the Bengals, it's their biggest Achilles heels for years. They haven't properly addressed the defense. They took Jamar Stewart, a raw prospect on a struggling defense. They didn't pay Trey Hendrickson a true long-term contract. It's just so many. There's so many woes about this team. It's just ridiculous. It's just absolutely ridiculous. But again, I feel bad for the Bengals offense. I feel bad for their players that it's happening, but it is. And the Jets, they get a win, so they won't be winless. But now the race for the tank's on, though. It's the Jets, the Saints, and the Titans. We'll see who wins out. Moving right along. Now, the AFC East division rival Buffalo Bills got a much-needed win against the Carolina Panthers. You had Cook had a really good game on the ground. Josh Allen continued his streak scoring. He got a rushing touchdown, and the Bills got a much-needed win. They got the bye week after 2 straight losses, which they certainly need to keep track with the Patriots, and they did just that, decimating the Carolina Panthers. And they had a great running game against a pretty good run defense. So I'm going to give Josh Allen the Bills credit. Now, at this point, the race in the AFC East is to see what happens between the Bills and the Patriots. But fun fact, all 4 teams in the NFC or the AFC East actually won their games, including the Patriots. Now, as of now, the Patriots beat the Cleveland Browns. first half was looking like a very low-scoring, skittish game. Patriots were up 9-7. Then they scored on all three of their drives in the second half. They got a little bit of help from their run game on some of those scoring drives. Trayvon Henderson had himself a pretty decent game. You had Drake May had a passing touchdown, even had a rushing touchdown. Patriots came on in the third quarter and really played their best football on offense, and it was good enough to lift them to over 30 points in a win over the Browns. And the best part for the Patriots is they have an easy schedule. They can just cruise through it, take advantage of the teams like the Cleveland Browns, the Carolina Panthers, the New Orleans Saints of the NFL, and win a bunch of games that way. You also got the Jets and Dolphins in your division that helps out. This Patriots team, now they've won 5 straight after 1-2 start. They could very easily end up making, maybe even come down to the wire between them and the Buffalo Bills. But I do believe either way, Patriots are going to make the playoffs the way they're going right now. Barring serious injuries, they're on pace to make the playoffs at least, if not win the AFC East. But it's going to come down to the wire late in the season between the Patriots and Bills. We just got to wait and see how it plays out. Moving right along, then here was the upset of the afternoon. The Texans and 49ers. Now, we did kind of know that the Texans were, we knew the 49ers were battered, injury riddled, but they kept finding ways to win games, and the Texans, for the most part, were dumpster fire. The biggest thing in this one was the Texans were able to shut down Christian McCaffrey and keep their run game to a minimum, and that played a huge role in the Texans winning this game. C.J. Stroud, he was pretty solid in this game. He had a few touchdown passes. And the Texans, actually, they did a pretty good job. They were on a roll. In this one, they took care of their business and won this game. So congrats to the Texans. While they are down, they're not out yet. Oh, wait, and here's a fun fact, too, but real quickly, going back to the Jets game, just for a quick second. There's something I forgot to say. The fun fact about that game is the New York Jets ended up winning the game with a touchdown pass from Breece Hall, who now becomes the 4th running back in Jets history to do so. 4th non-quarterback to throw a game-winning touchdown pass in the final 2 minutes or overtime, joining Rod Gardner from Washington in 2003, Curtis Martin in 2000 with the Jets, and Paul Cruz from 1977 with the Vikings. So congrats to Breece Hall there on that historic feat. But back to the Texans and Niners. I mean, the Texans got the win. I'll give them that. But I think the Niners, this might say a little bit more about the Niners, though, as well, being that this might be the point where the injuries finally catch up to them. And when the Texans, they got a much-needed win because they're still on pace. They could maybe sneak in the way it's looking with Indianapolis. Indy's probably going to win that division. I don't see anyone catching up to them in the AFC South. They're just rolling, bulldozing through teams. They're going to need Indy to go on a losing streak and to just win out late in the season. Now, is there a chance the Texans could, if they start winning games, maybe get the 7th seed? Maybe an outside shot, but we got to wait and see how that plays out. For the Texans, they got a needed win, but are still long-term concerns. Niners, got to wonder, is this the point where the injuries finally catch up to them? Big question. But moving right along, we got one more game we got the Eagles and Giants. I talked about this yesterday. The Eagles went out there in their Kelly Greens, took care of business, keep that winning streak going. Saquon had over 100 yards. Tank Bigsby had over 100 yards. Jalen Hurts reached the 100 touchdown mark for his career. So Jalen Hurts now officially has 100 touchdown passing on his career. And the Eagles get the revenge on the Giants. They're 6-2 headed into the bye. They stay in first place in the NFC East. It looks like momentum's rolling back in their favor. For the Giants, this was an unfortunate loss. Not just the game, but unfortunately, Cam Skattebo suffered a serious injury, a gruesome ankle injury. He was carted off. He had to be rushed to a hospital, and he had emergency surgery Sunday night. I mean, it was gruesome scene, though. Unfortunately, I didn't see the ankle itself. Unfortunately, they didn't show the replay of it. But that's a sad injury. Do I believe Scadaboo will try to come back? Yes, but it's going to be a tough injury, especially for a running back to come from and get back to the previous production level. But prayers up to Cam Scadaboo on a full recovery. And congrats to the Eagles on getting the win, staying 6-2 and staying in control of their destiny. Now, moving right along to the 4 o'clock games, but this time around, I'm not going to take a break. Because like I said, I'm kind of short on time, trying to do this in an hour, so we're just going to go right through with it. Buccaneers Saints. What can we say? The Tampa Bay Buccaneers did what they needed to do. Now, as far as this game goes, we got an Anthony Nelson pick 6. Antoine Winfield Jr. covered a fumble, intercepted a pass. Kellen Moore, bench Rattler for Tyler Show, but they couldn't really do much. This was mostly the Buccaneers' defense obliterating the Saints and bending them to their will. That's, for lack of a better term. Buccaneers take care of business, get an easy win to bounce back from the Lions loss. So congrats to the Bucs. They stay in control of the NFC South. And now we just see where they go from here. Tyler Show, maybe he'll get the start, but I'm not too optimistic about his odds. Moving right along, Colts and Titans. What can I say about this game? This we're going to kind of breeze through because I want to dedicate more time to the other game. Colts took care of business. They did what they needed to do. Win as expected. That's what a top-tier team does. Indianapolis is looking like the class of the AFC right now, so congrats to them on their win and continuing momentum. Moving right along, Broncos-Cowboys, we actually going to have a little bit more to talk about here. This was in-game paper going into it. This was a possible upset because, the Cowboys offense had been playing really good. Dak had been carrying the team. Excellent. Cowboys have been getting a lot of games over 30 points. Even with a dumpster fire defense, they were competitive. But in this one against the Denver Broncos, the Broncos offense had a field day and had a confidence surger here against the Dallas Cowboys. R.J. Harvey had a nice rushing touchdown in this one. Oh, you also had Bryant as well scored. Bo Nix in this offense was looking great. Troy Franklin had himself a pretty solid game. This Broncos offense was just having a field day feasting on a depleted and dumpster fire Cowboys defense. And the offense goes, look, it's starting to catch up to Dak Prescott. The lack of supporting cast on defense is making it harder on the offense. And there's only so much Dak Prescott can do to try to carry this team. I mean, it's going to happen to any quarterback after a while. You try to carry a team with the dumpster fire defense, eventually it's going to catch up to you. It happened to Drew Brees with that 2012 Saints defense. They tried their best, but they can only do so much. It's similar here with the Cowboys. Dak is having a really good season. He's doing his best to carry them, but there's only so much he can do. And in this game, it started to catch up, especially going against a Denver Broncos defense with Pat Surtain, Nick Bonito. There's only so much they could do. And throughout the game, they were getting smoked. And make no mistake, the Cowboys didn't start scoring till garbage time, so don't let the 24 points fool you. The Broncos offense looked really good. Bo Nix and the receivers and running backs just had a field day against that Cowboys defense. So credit to the Denver Broncos. They're now 6-2, and they're in first place in the AFC West. We just got to wait and see how it plays out from there. But I give credit to Sean Payton. Year one over in Denver, it was a growing pain year for the team. Year two, they reached the playoffs as the 7th seed. Now year 3, they're in first place in the AFC West. They're looking like potential juggernaut, even in a loaded division with the Chargers and Chiefs. So I give the Denver Broncos credit for what they're doing out there. Sean Payton's done a nice job turning this team around. And Bo Nix is starting to make some people believe, if you will. So I give credit to the Denver Broncos for doing their thing. Now, as an Eagles fan, personally, I'll say this. Can you keep Jerry Jones as the owner? And David pointed out Sean Payton is a great coach. Absolutely. And you look at what he did his final year with the Saints. He led that team to 9 wins with a bunch of injuries. His final year in New Orleans without Drew Brees, without any real quarterback. So you look at that now, you see what he's doing with the Broncos. It's really working out. Well, so salute to Sean Payton and the Broncos for finally having a nice turnaround, getting back into contention. And speaking of game, now this is an interesting game because we're dealing here with with Aaron Rodgers versus former team. History was on the line. Rodgers was looking to add his name to the list of quarterbacks, the small list of quarterbacks, to have a win against all 32 teams in the NFL. He was going to join Brett Favre, Peyton Manning, and Tom Brady. But that didn't quite happen in this case. The Packers had other plans in mind. Jordan Love had himself a really good game, 4 touchdown passes, and I'll say it, the Steelers' defense is not as strong as it once was. It's not. We've seen it the last 2 games. They got torched first by the Bengals, now by the Packers, and they're now sitting at 4-3. And if possibly the Ravens start winning some games, that could be a turnaround there, but that remains to be determined. Now, as far as the Packers go, now their offense isn't great on a week-to-week basis, but in this game, Jordan Love had himself an excellent game, and they really did their thing. They look phenomenal here. And the Packers defense, hey, they got themselves a really strong defense. The addition of Micah Parsons is paying off. Now you see this time around, Packers sit at 5-1-1. And you see the difference. How many times I got to repeat myself? You see the difference between the Cowboys-Broncos game and how the Broncos torched them. Not to take anything away from the Broncos offense. They were good, but you saw also how bad the Cowboys defense was. Versus the Packers and Steelers. The Packers, you see how much better their defense is with Parsons. And it clearly showed on prime time. And now you see the difference being made with the Packers. They're sitting at 5-1-1. And they're, looking like a dark horse in the NFC. Now, granted, they did have the losses to the Browns and the tie with the Cowboys, but they bounced back from that. They've won several games, including a game against Pittsburgh, who was a formidable foe on prime time. Micah Parsons been going out there doing his thing, doing what we expected, making this Packers defense better. And this team as a whole is looking better for it. So far, as expected, the Green Bay Packers are a contender in the NFC, sitting at 5-1-1. They're in first place in the NFC North. Momentum's rolling in their favor. Now we got to see what happens. And it's going to come down between the Packers and the Lions, clearly. Vikings are not the same team. The Bears are, at best, middle of the pack. It's clearly going to be the Packers versus Lions race. And we'll see at the end of the season how it plays out between those two teams. So congrats to the Green Bay Packers. Excellent win in this one. Aaron Rodgers, he had his flashes of brilliance in this game, but he's 40 years old. It's not 2015 Aaron Rodgers. It's clearly not. Steve's Mania, hit the like button. Thanks for the support, man. Thanks for stopping by in this one right here. So congrats to them. And then moving right along, we got the Monday night game. It was pretty much what we expected. Now, the first half was kind of interesting. It was interesting in regards we didn't really see the punters, but we barely saw any points. We saw interceptions and fumbles. It was an offensive slop in the first half with the players the offensive players were just not cutting it in the first half. It just wasn't happening. But then in the second half, they started to turn around. Mahomes finished with 299 on passing yards. He did have 3 touchdowns, found Kareem Hunt twice, found Travis Kelce. And now Travis Kelce made history too. He tied Priest Holmes for most touchdowns in Kansas City history with 83 scores. So salute to Travis Kelce on that nod. And for those saying that his engagement to Taylor Swift was getting to him, well, guess what? He's starting to turn back to football form now. And Arku says, I was at the Thunder Mavs game last night. How did it go? So Arku pointed out, shout out to Arku. He got to go see his Oklahoma City Thunder live against the Dallas Mavericks. That game, but let's see. You guys going to win the division for sure now. Right, referring to the Eagles, especially after that performance the Commanders. I mean, look, as far as Washington goes, let's just say this while we're on that subject. This is what happens when the injury bug catches up to you. It's hard to repeat expectations from the previous year. And another reason why, too, the NFL had there was injuries. It's hard when your starting quarterback's missing most of the games, and he pretty much carried the way for you last season, was the clear-cut rookie of the year. When you don't have that guy in the lineup, it's hard to repeat the efforts from the previous season. And considering Washington has the oldest team in the NFL, they don't have the right blend of young guys and veterans. Like, you see a perfect example. Sixers are playing good so far. No one else is good in the NFC East. Exactly. And with Washington, you don't have the right blend of veterans and younger guys. Like the Seattle Seahawks are a perfect example. They got the right blend of young talent and veterans, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And that's helped them out to a really good season. Whereas Washington has the wrong blend of too many veterans, and now it's starting to haunt them, and it's hurting their play on the field. And then, so you see that coming back to haunt them. And then, but for Kansas City, congrats on the win. Now they're starting to roll. They're at 5-3. They've won 4 of their last 5, and they keep pace with the Chargers and Broncos. And like I said, AFC West is going to be the most interesting division in football. First, you got the AFC West. In the AFC, you got the Broncos leading the pack, but then you got Kansas City and the Chargers both sitting at 5-3, scratching and clawing right behind them. And the Chargers already have wins over Denver and Kansas City during the regular season, so don't count out their odds. Even though it's looking like a long shot, they still do have a chance of beating them out, considering they've already beat those two teams head-to-head. We're still going to wait and see how that plays out, but that's the most interesting division. In the NFC, it's clearly the NFC West. Now, most of the teams were on bye this week, but I think in that division, you still have the Niners. While taking a loss to the Texans, they still have a winning record and still have a good roster. You got the Rams and Seahawks sitting at 5-2, fresh off bye weeks, coming back rejuvenated. Both those teams have looked really good. It's going to be an interesting three-way race with those teams. Now, the Niners look like the long shot with the injuries, but remember, they did beat the Rams head-to-head already, and the Niners have had the Rams number in the regular season in recent years, so don't be surprised if it goes down that way. That game didn't matter much. Everyone's talking about Game 3 of the World Series. Right, 18 innings, the Dodgers win. That's insane, man. If you're a baseball fan that likes to sit down for hours and hours at a time, you had a great game nighttime last night. Now, for those like me, that's one of the things that's hard for me to really get into it because I'm not really a big fan of sitting for hours at a time. But one thing's for sure we can't take away. The Dodgers are right on the cusp, ready to repeat. So congrats to the Dodgers on their hard-fought win, and we'll see what happens from there. I might glance at the World Series a little bit just for something to watch, but I don't really know enough to come on here and talk about it. But then moving right along, like I said, we're kind of on shorter time this week, so we're going to kind of wrap this thing up a little bit more. Start NFL Week 8 winners, and I'm going with the orange because it's Halloween week, hence, David, the beginning. No, I don't follow. I did for like a year when I was younger, like in the mid-2000s. For like about 2 years, then I kind of started to lose interest in it. That was like that mid-2000 point where the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Carolina Hurricanes were winning cups. But then after that, I started to slowly lose interest. But then moving along, let's talk about the NFL, the biggest three winners in week 8 for the NFL. I'm going to start with the Denver Broncos going in a game where they might have been a bit on upset alert the way Dak was playing. And based off the fact their offense didn't play great against the Eagles or the Jets and then waited till the fourth quarter against the Giants, there was potential for an upset. But the Broncos went out there, proved all those critics wrong, dropped over 40 points. Yes, I know it was over 40 points against the Cowboys defense, but it's an over 40-point outing. The Broncos look good on offense, and they moved to 6-2 in first place in a tough division. So I got to give them props there. Getting 6 wins is much needed in that AFC West, and the Broncos certainly did their job asserting themselves with a win. Now, it may not always be pretty, but they're winning games week to week, and that's what matters most. So that's the first area right there. They got good talent on offense and defense, and Sean Payton's putting it all together. The second one, I got to go to the Green Bay Packers. The trade's paying off. You're sitting at 5-1-1. This was the Packers' toughest game, and there were some doubt. I was going into this saying this would be the true test game for the Packers. Because even though the Pittsburgh Steelers aren't that great a team, they're still a formidable foe. And I felt this would be the test game for the Packers. See how good they really are. Is their record just a product of having some of the right teams on the schedule, or are they really a good team? And they proved in this one they can be a good team, and they're contenders in the NFC. So for that, I consider the Packers big winners because they won that test game, and their defense looked good in this one. Parsons had a sack, continuing to pave the way, continuing to lead, and this defense is really strong. And as well, your offense actually looked really good here. Jordan Love had a good game. Maybe this could help with his confidence. So I'll consider him a winner for that one right there. And I'm going to give credit where credit's due. The Green Bay Packers were big winners in this one. And the last one I'm going to go with on this one is going to be the Philadelphia Eagles. Because, yes, even though they are my team, but I think this is really the first time I picked them as the big winners because this was a trap game going into it against the Giants after what happened the last go-around week 6. And the Eagles did a complete 180 from their week 6 performance and decimated the Giants. Don't let the 20 points fool you. That final score came in garbage time when the Eagles were well up. Eagles dominated this game. Saquon Barkley had a really good game. Tank Bigsby had a good game on limited play. You had Devontae Smith was good in the role. Jalen Hurts continues to have an excellent season as a passer. Jalen Carter brought some life to this Eagles pass rush with 5 sacks. Excellent win going into the bye. Stay in control in that NFC East. Move on to 6-2. Excellent for the Eagles there. Now, moving right along, I don't even know why I hit the Eagles score recap. I should have kept on week 8 winners. Now, the 3 biggest losers for week 8 in this one, I'm going to start with the Atlanta Falcons because even though they're a mediocre team, it may not seem like a big thing that they lost, but losing to the Miami Dolphins the way they did, getting blown out, and letting Tua Tagovailoa look like a star again, which we haven't seen all season, is an absolute embarrassment. When the Falcons, I know they're, like I said, they're mediocre, but they should have been able to win this game. This was a winnable game, and they blew it. Ultimately, not only did they lose, but they lost in embarrassing fashion. Now, if this would have been a close game and the Dolphins would have edged them out with a win, then I would have just been like, okay, the bad team edged out the mediocre team. But nah, the mediocre team got embarrassed by the Miami Dolphins. Enough said about them. Next ones are the same. Now, I was kind of leaning toward the San Francisco 49er. I'm going to go with the Cincinnati Bengals because you lost to the Jets. Or I'll go with the Bengals defense particularly. You couldn't even hold off the winless Jets. I mean, come on. Your offense put up 38 points. That should have been enough, but you didn't. Your defense bombed, and you ultimately lost to the Jets. That's an embarrassment right there. Kirk Cousins sucks. We have to start this combo again. Oh, please, don't even. And the final big loser for the week, the Minnesota Vikings. Against a team like the Chargers, they went out and got absolutely embarrassed. Nothing went right for them. They couldn't run the ball. Carson Wentz is out for the season. Now, what do you do at quarterback? You hope you get J.J. McCarthy back and he can pull some magic. But that's going to be kind of hard with J.J. McCarthy missing his entire rookie season and most of the early portion of his second season. And then worse off, you couldn't even stop the Chargers' run game or their passing game. That's why my cousin, who's a Vikings fan, can't stand them. Oh my gosh, the Vikings, Jesus. He was referring to the Kirk Cousins conversation because he had that conversation, I'm sure, plenty of times. But I don't want to remind you too much of it. But Jesus Christ, man. Absolute abomination there by the Vikings. Falling short and now having a lot of long-term questions. Before we go on this one, I'm going to just real quickly talk about NBA opening week. Now, I'm not going to say a whole lot yet because it is the only first week of the season. Unfortunately, the opening week kind of got overshadowed by that whole gambling scandal, which I ranted about earlier. Now, as far as the opening week itself goes, I'll say this. Luka Doncic had a few pretty good games in this one. Now, the Lakers as a team, though, looking like at best they might be mid or maybe like the 2023 Mavericks where they just don't live up to expectations. But it's way too early in the season to tell. Now, the Sixers so far, they got some exciting young pieces. Maxey, Edgecombe, looking good so far. So I'll give them, that's nice right there. But the defending champ OKC Thunder have won some games. Rockets went out there. Wemby has been really balling out this so far. We'll see how that plays out as the season goes along and how the Spurs come along as a team. But I'm not going to say too much yet. In the Rockets, yes, the Rockets did lose 2 games. Durant fell out in the opener, but it's still early in the season. To be fair, the Rockets did have themselves a good performance against the Thunder, even in defeat. But like I said, it's early in the season. We got a whole season ahead of us. Let's see what happens. Let's see who makes it through the season healthy, what trades go down mid-season. Let's just let it play out, see how this goes down. But like I said, I'm kind of short on time for this one. I got some other things to do today. So this episode was only about an hour long. Next week, though, we should be back to the formula of having the hour-plus long shows where I actually take some time to talk in detail. But all I'm going to say is this. Sorry if this was shorter than expected, but it's just a one-week deal. But thanks to everyone that tuned in, Arku, David, and everyone that always shows up. Thank you for your support, especially Arku and David. You're my most loyal 3-Point Blitz followers, so thanks again for your loyalty. And I'll certainly be back next week for episode 33. And anyone else that stopped by, whether it be for a few minutes or not, thanks for your support. I hope you enjoyed this episode. So with that being said, I kind of do have to get rolling in this go around. So that being said, but you'll catch me later tonight by 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, exclusively on the Hardcore Sports Network. Me and Agent Warrior hosting Week 9 of NFL Pick'em. Check us out then. So with that being said, I got to get going. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Until next time, peace.